Have you ever wondered what the very first prayer sounded like? Before the great temples, before the holy books, before the long robes and the grand ceremonies, some human, somewhere, felt a need to speak to the unseen. What did they ask for? Was it a plea for the sun to return? A whisper of thanks for a successful hunt? A cry of grief for a lost child? This question is not just a curious thought about the distant past. It matters today, on January 1st, 2026, because that same deep human impulse to seek meaning, to find comfort, and to connect with something larger than ourselves still shapes our modern world in countless ways. We live in a world filled with towering skyscrapers, instant communication, and scientific explanations for almost everything. We can map the human genome and send robots to other planets. Yet billions of people still turn to ancient stories and rituals. They find structure for their lives, solace for their hearts, and a moral compass for their actions within religious frameworks. Understanding where religion came from is not about judging belief. It is about understanding a fundamental part of the human operating system. It helps us understand history, politics, art, and even our own neighbors. To begin this journey, we must travel back in time. Imagine not a city, but a small band of hunter-gatherers, maybe 30 or 40 people huddled around a crackling fire. Their world was full of mystery. A sudden flash of lightning in the sky was not an electrical discharge. It was a terrifying, magnificent event. The silence of a forest was not just an absence of noise, it was filled with unseen presences. The first major reason religion began is rooted inside our own skulls. The human brain is a story machine. It is hardwired to look for causes and effects, to see intention where there might be none. If a rock falls from a cliff, we do not just see a random event. We ask, what caused it to fall? Or even, who threw it? This tendency, known as agency detection, was a powerful survival tool. It was safer to assume that the rustle in the bushes was a hungry lion rather than just the wind. This hyper-attentive mindset, always looking for an agent, a who behind the what, did not just apply to predators. It also applied to the grand forces of nature. When a great storm thundered across the plains, flooding the river and scattering the herds, it was easy for the human mind to imagine it was the work of a powerful, angry being. When the rains came just in time to save the wilting plants, it was natural to think a benevolent spirit was showing favor. These were not complex theological doctrines. They were simple, intuitive stories. The thunder became a sky god's roar. The gentle rain became a gift from a fertility goddess. Our brains created characters to explain the plot of the world. These stories served a crucial cognitive function. They transformed a terrifying random world into one that was, at least in theory, understandable and even negotiable. You cannot reason with a hurricane, but you might be able to appease a storm god. You could offer a gift, sing a song, or perform a dance. This gave people a sense of control, however illusory. It provided a framework for understanding events that were otherwise baffling and overwhelming. This cognitive leap, from it thundered to the thunder god is angry, is arguably one of the most significant steps in human history. This storytelling impulse is still with us. We see it in our love for movies, novels, and even conspiracy theories. We crave narratives that connect the dots and provide a clear explanation, assigning heroes and villains. The first religions were the original epic tales. They explained where the world came from, why humans exist, and what happens after we die. Our greatest strength is our ability to cooperate in large numbers. But cooperation is tricky. How do you get hundreds of people who barely know each other to trust one another? How do you get them to follow the same rules? How do you get them to work toward a common goal? How do you stop people from cheating, stealing, lying when no one is watching? This is a fundamental problem for any large group, an ancient tribe, a modern nation. Religion provided an ingenious solution, a supernatural overseer. If everyone believes that an all-knowing God is always watching, or a host of ancestral spirits is always watching, they are more likely to behave. The fear of divine punishment, the hope of a heavenly reward, can be a more effective deterrent than a village elder who cannot be everywhere at once. This belief creates a powerful incentive for pro-social behavior. It encourages honesty, fairness, altruism, even toward strangers within the same faith community. This shared belief system acts as social glue, binding individuals into a cohesive, cooperative unit. Two tribes live in a valley. One tribe believes only in man-made rules. The other believes their great mountain spirit will punish liars and thieves. Which tribe is more likely to thrive? The second tribe, bonded by shared sacred truth, will likely cooperate more effectively. They can build bigger irrigation projects, mount a more coordinated defense, create more stable trade networks. Their shared myths and rituals reinforce group identity, making them feel like an extended family. This social function helped humans scale up from small bands of a few dozen kin to anonymous societies of thousands. A shared god or creation story could unite people who had never met. It gave them a common identity and shared values. This allowed the first large villages, then cities, then vast empires. The pyramids of Egypt were not built by close friends. They were built by a massive workforce united partly by belief in the pharaoh's divinity and a promise of a collective afterlife. The third major pillar for the origin of religion, the deep human need for comfort in the face of suffering and control in the face of chaos. Early human life was fraught with peril, famine, disease, injury, predators, childbirth. Life was unpredictable. Death was an ever-present companion. This constant vulnerability creates immense psychological stress. People craved reassurance that their suffering was not meaningless and that they were not alone. Religion offered a powerful balm. It promised a caring deity or a protective ancestor watching over them. Prayer became a way to articulate fears and hopes, a direct line to a power that could intervene. Rituals surrounding death, burial rituals, provided a structured way to process grief and offered the comforting idea that life did not simply end. Paradise, rebirth, a spiritual realm. This made death less terrifying. It suggested injustices might be rectified in the next life. This promise gave people strength to endure suffering. Beyond personal comfort, religion offered a blueprint for social order. As groups grew, informal customs weren't enough. Religion provided ultimate authority for laws. A rule is no longer just an elder's suggestion. It becomes a sacred command from a god. Do not steal. Good advice. Thou shalt not steal. Forbidden by God. Much more powerful. Divine authority could justify social hierarchies. Kings and priests at the top, commoners and slaves at the bottom. This power to create order was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it could create stable societies, predictable, relatively safe communities where people could flourish. Priests and shamans acted as judges, healers, keepers of knowledge, providing essential services. On the other hand, it could enforce rigid, oppressive systems. Religious leaders could demand absolute obedience, suppress dissent, justify conquest and exploitation. How did simple stories about a thunder god evolve into complex institutions, with temples, priests, and holy books? The process was gradual, taking place over thousands of years. It began with the formalization of stories into shared myths. Elders would pass these tales to the next generation around the campfire, ensuring the tribe's worldview remained consistent. These myths were not just entertainment. They were educational manuals for how the world worked and how one should behave within it. They explained which plants were safe to eat, which mountains were sacred, and which clans were allies. From these shared myths, rituals emerged. A ritual is a story in action. If the myth says a rain god brings water, a ritual might involve a specific dance or chant to summon the rain. If the myth says the dead travel to a spirit world, a burial ritual might include tools and food for the journey. These actions made the abstract beliefs tangible and communal. Performing a ritual together strengthened social bonds and reinforced the reality of the myth. As societies grew more complex, especially with the advent of agriculture, these rituals and beliefs became more structured. Seasonal cycles of planting and harvesting became central to religious life. Festivals were organized to mark the solstice or to celebrate a successful harvest, giving thanks to the relevant deities. A specialized class emerged, priests, priestesses, shamans, to manage increasingly elaborate rituals, knowing the correct prayers, the right time, and how to interpret omens. They became the intermediaries between the human and divine worlds. This specialization led directly to formal laws and social codes. Priests, as interpreters of divine will, were in a unique position to set the rules for society. What began as simple moral stories evolved into detailed legal codes like the Code of Hammurabi or the Mosaic Law of the ancient Hebrews. These religious laws governed everything from marriage, inheritance, and diet to commerce, providing a stable framework that transformed whispered stories into the scaffolding of civilization. The impact of religion quickly expanded beyond rules and rituals to reshape the physical and cultural landscape. One of the most visible legacies of religion is architecture. To honor their gods, humans began to build things far larger and more magnificent than anything required for mere survival. They piled massive stones to create Stonehenge, carved temples out of cliffs at Petra, erected colossal pyramids in Egypt, and built pyramids in Mexico. These structures were not just shelters or forts. They were physical declarations of faith and power. They required immense cooperation, resource mobilization, advanced engineering, all driven by a shared religious purpose. They became the focal points of society, centers for rituals, centers for festivals, centers for community life. The awe inspired by a massive cathedral, a towering minaret, an ornate temple, testifies to the power of belief to mobilize human creativity and labor. Religion gave people a reason to build for eternity, not just for the next season. This creative explosion poured into art, music, literature. The earliest cave paintings likely had ritual functions. Sculptors carved statues of gods and goddesses. Musicians composed hymns and chants for worship. Scribes and poets wrote down epic myths and sacred histories, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Vedas. Much of what we call culture has roots in religious activity. Art communicated with the divine. Music became prayer. Stories became sacred truth. For most of human history, there was no clear separation between the religious and the secular. The drive to understand and connect with the cosmos fueled creativity that still inspires us today. That legacy still speaks to us. Religion was a revolutionary force for unifying humanity, but this unity came at a cost. The same shared belief that could bind 1 million people could also create a sharp and often violent division between us and them. Us were the believers, the faithful, the chosen people who followed the true God and the correct rituals. Them were the unbelievers, the infidels, the heretics who lived in darkness and worshipped false idols. This universalist ambition, one true faith for all humanity, was a novel and powerful invention. Before this, most animistic and polytheistic beliefs were local. The god of a river or a tribe did not care about the far side of the mountain. But with the rise of universal religions like Christianity, like Islam, belief transcended kinship and place. This was a powerful tool for building vast, multi-ethnic empires. A merchant in Morocco, a warrior in Pakistan could feel a bond of brotherhood as fellow Muslims, even if they spoke different languages. However, this same universalizing tendency also fueled brutal conflicts. The Crusades, the Jihads, the European wars of religion. belief in a singular truth that built cathedrals also justified large-scale violence. Even today, religion inspires hospitals, food for the hungry, and justice, and it is often a key ingredient in conflict. The very power to form strong in-groups creates strong out-groups, prejudice, discrimination, and violence. Well, it's complicated, of course. The relationship between religion and science, or the pursuit of knowledge, is far more complex than a simple story of conflict. For much of history, religious institutions were primary centers of learning. In medieval Europe, Christian monks painstakingly copied and preserved texts of ancient Greece and Rome. Without them, much would be lost. Similarly, during the Islamic Golden Age, 8th to 14th century, Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba, leading centers for science, medicine, mathematics. Driven by curiosity and religious needs, like finding Mecca, scholars advanced algebra, optics, astronomy, medicine. Many saw studying nature as understanding God's creation. For them, faith and reason were partners. However, conflict was also inevitable. Religion often relies on unchanging texts and absolute truths. Science relies on questioning, doubt, revision. Science holds no truth sacred and will discard theories when evidence contradicts them. When discoveries challenge doctrines, Galileo, Darwin, opposition often followed. Today, many religious individuals embrace science, but conflicts arise over evolution, climate change, medical ethics. The story is not light versus darkness. It's a complicated dance between seeking meaning, purpose, moral order, and seeking testable explanations. Throughout history, they've clashed, cooperated, and shaped one another. So yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. So, where does this long journey leave us in 2026? We can see that religion was not invented by a single person in a single moment. It grew organically from deep within the human experience. It began with a brain that seeks patterns, that tells stories. It was nurtured by our social need for cooperation and trust. It was cemented by our craving for comfort in the face of death and for order in the face of chaos. These ancient pressures have not disappeared. They have simply changed their form. Today, religion's role is more varied and contested than ever before. For billions, it remains the central pillar of existence. It provides meaning. It provides community. It provides moral guidance. For others, it has been replaced by secular ideologies. Nationalism, humanism, capitalism. Those also offer stories, rituals, moral codes. Science has answered many hows. How the universe began, how life evolved, but is silent on the whys. Why are we here? How should we live? The story of religion is proof that humans cannot live on bread alone. We need meaning as much as we need food. We build our lives on stories. For millennia, religious myths shaped societies, laws, art, and our deepest sense of self. To understand our world, we must understand their origins and evolution. The story is not over.